At the very beginning of the One Piece story, we're told that there are three great powers in the One Piece world, whose power balance is the reason that there's currently world peace. Those three great powers are the 7 Warlords of the Sea, Marine Headquarters, and the 4 Emperors of the Sea. We've already talked about the Admirals on this channel, link to that video in the description, and the 7 Warlords of the Sea have been disbanded, so I'm gonna leave them for another time. That means that today, we're here to talk about the 4 Emperors of the Sea, and even though you would think that that means that we'd only be talking about 4 characters in these videos, that isn't the case at all. This is because, just like most things throughout the One Piece story, the ranks of the Yonko have evolved as the story has gone on, as there have been 7 total characters that have held Emperor status in the story so far. All 7 of these characters are really interesting, and one of them even features our main character, so you guys already know that we have a lot to talk about today, even though we'll only be covering the original 4. The 4 Emperors are a group of 4 pirates considered to be the most notorious and powerful captains in the world. The Emperors have historically resided within the second half of the Grand Line, captaining powerful subordinates and massive fleets, as well as exerting influence and control over dozens of other pirate crews and self-governing islands. For the most part, each Emperor works alone and is constantly at odds with other Emperors and the world government. In fact, we've only really seen 2 Yonko team up one time in the One Piece story so far, and that was when Kaido and Big Mom teamed up during Wano. I guess you could say that Shanks and the Whitebeard pirates teamed up after Marineford, but that was only really to pay respects to both Ace and Whitebeard, and it wasn't like they fought anybody together. So, we've got 7 total characters to talk about in these videos. One of them is confirmed to be dead, 2 of them have statuses that are currently unknown, and the other 4 are still alive and are the characters that make up the current Yonko roster. We're of course going to be talking about them in the order that they were Yonko, so we're going to talk about the original 4 first, and then we'll talk about the characters that have become Yonko as the story has gone on. And with that, I think it's time to hop into the first one, and I only think it's right to talk about the world's strongest man, Whitebeard, first. Edward Newgate, more well known as Whitebeard, was a legendary pirate and the captain of the Whitebeard Pirates. Not only was he known as the world's strongest man, he was also considered the man closest to the One Piece after Roger's death. With that being said, despite all of his strength and the tons of people that he had by his side, he never claimed the One Piece despite knowing that it's real, and there's a reason for that. This is because, due to being an orphan who grew up in poverty, Whitebeard had a strong desire for family, which he saw as the greatest treasure one could have. While he didn't claim the One Piece despite being the man closest to it, he did achieve his dream of having a large family, as every crew member and other pirate crew that follows him refers to him as Pops. He was the father that a lot of pirates didn't have growing up on the seas, so it wasn't only his strength that gained him the respect that he truly deserved. We're also still learning more about Whitebeard despite the fact that he died during the Marineford War, as he's a prominent member of both the Odin flashback and the God Valley flashback that we're currently getting. His early history as a pirate saw him as a member of the legendary Rocks Pirates due to the fact that he lost a Davy back fight to him over 48 years ago. He did a ton of different things with the Rocks Pirates, including creating relationships with both Big Mom and Kaido, and having the hots for Shaki, which it seems like everybody in the One Piece world had at the time. His time in the Rocks Pirates also meant that he was on God Valley during the fabled God Valley incident, as he was even one of the original people who was fighting against Emu before Emu turns Rocks into a demon. It was really at this moment that the Rocks Pirates disbanded, and about 5 years after the God Valley incident, Whitebeard's own crew, the Whitebeard Pirates, was formed. Seeing as he was a former Rocks Pirates member, it was probably around this time that he also became a Yonko alongside Kaido and Big Mom, who also formed their own crews. After this, about 30 years ago, the Whitebeard Pirates went to Wano where they got shipwrecked, and even though he didn't want to take Odin with him at first, Odin eventually gained his respect when he passed his test. This actually led to the creation of the division system that we see in the Whitebeard Pirates at the Marineford War, where Odin is actually appointed as the very first commander of the 2nd Division. This means that Odin and Ace are connected in a way that you wouldn't expect, because the only other 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates that we've seen in this story is Ace. It was around the time of the division creation that Whitebeard also allowed Blackbeard to join his crew, and there's a whole lot more stuff that we're going to talk about regarding him when we eventually get to his part of the series. A lot of fun stuff happens while Odin is on Whitebeard's crew, like Whitebeard's final clash with Roger, which really shows why Whitebeard was declared the strongest after Roger's execution. Seeing two absolute legends first fight and then talk about each other's goals was absolutely incredible, and it was also because of Whitebeard that Odin ended up joining Roger's crew. Whitebeard is just such a likable character every time that he appears, and while there were some cool stuff that happened between Roger's execution and his adoption of Ace, it's that adoption that we need to talk about next. You see, about 3 years before Luffy set out on his own journey, Ace had a 5-day battle against Jinbei where it ended in a draw when both men went down at the same time. Right after this fight, Whitebeard approached the Spade pirates aboard the Moby Dick and told his own crew that he would deal with Ace alone. Now, despite the fact that Whitebeard defeated Ace without getting a single scratch himself, he still saw the potential in Ace and drafted him into his crew. This was how Ace became the 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard pirates by the time that we saw him in Alabasta, despite the fact that he tried to assassinate his new father multiple times. Whitebeard's handling of Ace is one of the best things about his character in my opinion, because we all know how much Ace hated the fact that he was the son of the king of the pirates, but Whitebeard didn't care at all. Despite thinking that it would be a big deal when he first told him, Ace wasn't met with ridicule because according to Whitebeard, everyone is a son of the sea. Whitebeard never hated Roger despite the fact that they were rivals, and Ace being Roger's son doesn't matter because he already sees Ace as one of his own. It was so nice to see a person as headstrong and loyal as Ace have so many people in his life that cared about him as much as he cared about them, and Whitebeard is one of the main examples of that. And now that Ace is on his crew, we can talk about what Whitebeard does during the current day of the story, because despite his age, he still has some moments that only make his legend grow. In his very first appearance during the Jaya arc, it was already obvious that he was larger than life, quite literally and figuratively, towering over everybody on his ship and ripping up a letter that Shanks had someone deliver for him. It's also during this time that we learn that he's pretty sick, seeing as he has a ton of doctors surrounding him and all of these tubes in his body, but that illness isn't gonna stop him from being a total badass. Then, during the post-Enies lobby arc, we get the first meeting between two Yonko that we get in the entire story, as Shanks goes to visit Whitebeard because he has something important to talk to him about. This scene is written and drawn so well by Oda, because even though it's clearly friendly most of the time, there's just that air of tension that makes you believe that things could pop off at any time. Shanks flexing his Conqueror's Haki on his stroll up is some next level trolling, and Whitebeard just sitting there because he knows he's fine, and accepting Shanks' gift was the icing on top. They then have a friendly conversation, with Shanks telling Whitebeard the reason that he gave up his arm, but things get tense once again once Shanks brings up some members of Whitebeard's crew. Mainly how he doesn't think that it's a good idea for Ace to go after Blackbeard, and even though Whitebeard told him the same thing, he still stands up for his son's decision and clashes with Shanks. Coming to learn that Whitebeard was against Ace going after Blackbeard during the Marineford War, and then backing up his son's decision in public, is yet another reason as to why Whitebeard is a goated character. Speaking of Marineford, Whitebeard doesn't really appear in the story again until that arc, and his performance at Marineford is something that's still stuck in my mind to this day. Not only was he a one-man wrecking crew against the Navy's best soldiers, he also has another character moment with one of the members of his crew that makes him the best father that a pirate could ask for. During Marineford, we're introduced to a character named Squard, and after he lost his entire crew to Roger, Whitebeard took him in and treated him like a son, saving him from the loneliness of losing all of his comrades. Squard, in return, thought of Whitebeard as a father figure, but felt betrayed when he thought that Whitebeard was planning to sacrifice all of his subordinate crews to save Ace, leading him to stab Whitebeard in a surprise attack. Whitebeard was able to prove otherwise, of course, and Squard broke down in tears at his mistake. This leads to my favorite Whitebeard quote of them all when he says, "Squard, how dare you draw your sword against your father? What a stupid son you are. You may be a fool, but I still love you. I know how much you hate Gold Roger, but it's wrong to condemn a child for the sins of his father, Squard. What did Ace ever do to you? Be good to each other. Ace isn't the only one who's special to me. I love all my children." It would have been perfectly acceptable for Whitebeard not to accept Squard after he betrayed him, but that's not the kind of man that Whitebeard is, so he makes sure that his son still knows that he's loved. This is a huge moment in this arc, not only for Whitebeard's character, but also for what it does to the momentum of the war itself. Squard stabbed stabbing Whitebeard was seen as a moment where it was basically confirmed that the Whitebeard pirates were currently losing, but once Whitebeard forgives Squard and rallies his troops, it's like all of them are given a second wind. Whitebeard even gives his allies the means to escape if they want to by opening a path with his devil fruit, but everybody believes what he's selling, and the Navy, especially Sengoku, immediately realizes that their plan backfired. And once Whitebeard is on the move at Marineford, his presence is felt immediately, even though he's extremely sick, as we established with his very first appearance. In all honesty, he was still a menace when he was just standing on his ship, defeating a vice admiral in a single hit, and quite literally catching one of Akainu's magma rocks on his giant sword. The aura that this man exudes is incomparable, and that's only heightened with his extremely overpowered devil fruit, the Gura Gura no Mi. This is of course a Paramecia devil fruit that allows Whitebeard to literally create earthquakes, and is one of the main reasons as to why Whitebeard is referred to as the strongest man in the world. The best fight that he has during Marineford is obviously his fight against Akainu, and the fact that he was the only one that was able to do damage to him really speaks volumes. He had also taken a ton of damage from swords, guns, and bullets at this point, and even fought on after Akainu took out a part of his face, forcing him out of the battle with a tremor. The ultimate betrayal of Blackbeard made the conclusion of his character hit extra hard, and everybody is aware of the panel showcasing him dead standing up, but I'm gonna quote it anyway. Even in death, even with half of his face gone, he would never fall. He will forever be remembered as a monster for the way that he destroyed his enemies that day. In this one battle alone, he suffered 267 sword wounds, was struck by 152 bullets, and 46 cannon blasts. And yet, neither that mighty body nor his pirate pride suffered even one coward's wound. This is quite literally the perfect way for a character like Whitebeard to go out, as not only did it perfectly embody him, it also perfectly embodied the people that served under him. Whitebeard not only embodied the title of Yonko, he also embodied the title of World's Strongest Man, and that's why I felt like it would be wrong if he wasn't the first person that I talked about in this video. Charlotte Lin Lin, better known as Big Mom, is the captain of the Big Mom Pirates, and was formerly one of the 4 emperors ruling over the New World, as the only female member of the group. She's the queen of an archipelago nation called Totoland, a place she seeks to form into a utopia where all the world's races can live together in peace without discrimination or segregation. She's also known as Big Mom because her main crew consists of her children, and this lady has had 85 children, so her crew is pretty damn big. Just like Whitebeard, she's also big as hell, as she's 880 centimeters, which is 28 feet and 10 inches tall. I also believe that she has the most intimidating debut out of all of the original Yonko, as she first appears during the Fishman Island arc, and Luffy gets on her bad side right away. The double page spread of her drooling over the Denden Mushi like she wants to come fight Luffy right away is truly terrifying, and Big Mom has always had a scary presence to me. In all honesty, she kinda becomes the least serious member of the Yonko because of things like her hunger pangs during Whole Cake Island, and the amnesia that she got during Wano, but I think her goofiness makes her even more dangerous. Like Aokiji, how goofy Big Mom is at times can make you forget just how powerful she is, and then she overpowers Queen with a headbutt while having no memories, and you remember just how dangerous she is. She also has a fight to the death against both Law and Kid, where Law and Kid barely win despite the fact that they both awakened their devil fruits shortly before the battle started. Just like Whitebeard, she was also a member of the Rocks Pirates in her early days of being a pirate, but her legend didn't really start when she was already a pirate. When Big Mom was just 5 years old, she was on the island of Elbaf and had one of her hunger pangs, but instead of getting her the Selma she wanted, the Giants didn't feed her because of a festival that required everybody participating to do a 12-day fast. You see, this was bad for a young Big Mom, as she suffered greatly as she kept craving food, and on the 7th day of fasting, she finally snapped and went on a rampage to get Selma. During this rampage, she caused great destruction throughout the village and took down multiple giants, so her actions were deemed to be heresy by Jorul, who attacked her despite Mother Caramel's pleas. Now this seems like it would be good. Joro could totally stop the rampage of a 5-year-old, but instead she shattered his sword with her bare hands before grabbing him by the beard and throwing him to the ground, fatally wounding him. Joro was the co-captain of the original giant warrior pirates, was known as a hero of the giants and one of the world's oldest warriors, and is the brother of the current oldest warrior in the world, by the way. So Big Mom was a massive threat before she even became a pirate, and she only became a bigger threat once she ate Mother Caramel and got her Soru Soru no Mi. After she gained these powers, she was approached by this guy named Streusen, who thought that she was a monster, and it was because of him that she came up with her idea of creating Toto Land in the first place. Now Streusen is a character that's really strange in my opinion, because he's been with Big Mom almost every step of her journey, and we truly don't know all that much about him. He was also a member of the Rocks Pirates because of his connection to Big Mom, and he was the executive chef of the Big Mom Pirates. This guy has always just been weird to me, especially since he's been around Big Mom since she was 6 years old, and the fact that Big Mom became a mother at a pretty young age. I don't know, he's always kind of been a creep to me, but it was alongside him when Big Mom was 24 years old that she was a member of the Rocks Pirates. In fact, she was the reason that Kaido got his extremely overpowered devil fruit, and we recently learned that he actually stole it from her because she planned on giving it to her son, Katakuri. Luckily, Katakuri was able to get his own overpowered devil fruit, the Mochi Mochi no Mi, but it was because of the fact that Kaido got his fruit from Big Mom that the two of them eventually teamed up during the Wano arc. Kaido owed Big Mom a big favor, and she decided to act on it when they both had a common enemy, and that led to one of, if not the craziest battle that we've gotten in the series so far. Big Mom formed her own crew about 35 years ago after the Rocks Pirates disbanded after the God Valley incident, trying to become the Pirate King, but we all know that Roger beat her to it 25 years ago. Her children also have some insane lore, as at one point, the Prince of Elbaf Loki proposed to Big Mom's 23rd daughter, Lola. Big Mom saw this as an opportunity to not only quell her strained relationship with the Giants by making it a political marriage that would forge an alliance between Elbaf and Toto Land, but also a means to become the Pirate King because of the power granted by Elbaf's famed giant army. Lola, being the goat she is, was able to escape from the arranged marriage against her mother's will. Big Mom did try again by using Lola's older sister Chiffon as a substitute, but that plan didn't work, and it only made her already strained relationship with the Giants even worse. The hatred that Elbaf has for Big Mom is honestly hilarious in my opinion, because she's even come up during the Elbaf arc, and they hate her just as much now as they did when she was 5. After her attempt to marry into Elbaf failed, Big Mom gave up on trying to befriend them, and instead decided to focus on creating artificial giants. In order to do that, she commissioned our boy Caesar Clown to research gigantification in order to turn her family members into giants, and that's why we see some big children during the Punk Hazard arc. Another cool thing that Big Mom does is protect Fishman Island after Whitebeard passes away, only she does it a little more strictly than he did, as she demands large amounts of candy in return, and that's why there's a candy factory when the Straw Hats visit Fishman Island. When it comes to the current day of the story, she of course becomes relevant because of the Whole Cake Island arc, and her plan to assassinate the Vinsmoke family after having her youngest daughter Pudding marry Sanji to form an alliance with them. She actually came up with this plan a while ago because of Germa 66's cloning technology, but she was only able to attempt it after the time skip because they couldn't find Sanji until he had a bounty of his own. Big Mom loves herself in arranged marriage, but the Whole Cake Island arc truly reveals something interesting about her character. In my opinion, despite the fact that she's a Yonko and one of the foremost powerful pirates in all of One Piece, she's always felt like a side threat and never the main threat. That's obviously the case in Wano, since the whole goal of that arc was to defeat Kaido from the very beginning, but that also seems to be the case during the Whole Cake Island arc, especially after the failed wedding between Sanji and Pudding. Soon after the Straw Hats crash the wedding and show Big Mom a broken picture of Mother Caramel, causing her to crash out, she has one of her hunger pangs and is quite literally kited like like a Call of Duty zombie. I mean, sure, she's still a giant threat even while being kited, and Sanji even joins her chefs to make an amazing wedding cake by the end of the arc, but she's always a background threat and never the main one. This also may be my main character bias since they're always my favorite characters in stories, but Katakuri is a much bigger threat because if Luffy loses to him, the Straw Hat Pirates probably disband right then and there. With that being said, there is an overlooked moment in this arc where Luffy tries to attack Big Mom in Gear 4th and gets one-shotted, actually making her the first Yonko that does this to him and not Kaido. I have never been someone to underestimate Big Mom when it comes to her strength, but she has always felt like the goofiest Yonko in my opinion. In all honesty, that isn't the worst thing ever since one of them has to hold that title, and even if we never see her again, she definitely made a huge impact on the One Piece story. Kaido of the Beast is renowned as the world's strongest creature, the Governor General of the Beast Pirates, and was formerly one of the 4 Emperors of the Sea. Just like Whitebeard was known as the strongest man in the world, Kaido was known as the strongest creature in the world, and you could honestly debate who was stronger to this day. My money's on Whitebeard, but that doesn't change how strong Kaido is in the slightest, because I believe that he's still the strongest enemy that Luffy has faced in the story so far. Kaido is also the Yonko that appears the latest in the story, as this guy doesn't appear until chapter 795, but he definitely makes a huge impact when he does eventually appear. This is because, during his first appearance, he jumps off of a sky island in an attempt to unalive himself, but since he's so powerful, he just survives the fall and falls into a meeting between some of the members of the worst generation. If this isn't the way to introduce the threat that's been getting built up since the Punk Hazard arc, then I don't know what is. This man is scary and he hasn't even attacked anybody yet. I personally believe that Kaido is the simplest of all the Yonko as well, but that doesn't make his goal of creating a massive war so we can die a spectacular death any less interesting. Pretty much every important pirate has connections with either Rocks or Roger, and as I've already said multiple times in this video, Kaido was on the legendary Rocks crew alongside the other Yonko that I've already talked about. While he was in this crew, he had an interesting dynamic however, as he was nowhere near the strongest member of the crew, as he joined it when he was just 15 years old. He left the same time that everybody else did, and since becoming a pirate, Kaido had only been defeated 7 times and captured 18 times by the Marines and the other members of his former crew. It was during these many times being captured that he was taken to Punk Hazard one time, and that's where they were able to get a sample of his lineage factor in order to create the devil fruit that Momonosuke currently has. His devil fruit is easily the most powerful that's ever been recreated so far, and it was after he escaped the facility that he started building his own crew. This included a Lunarian that was being experimented on named Arbor, and a mad scientist named Sheen. Now those names might not mean anything to you, but those are the true names of both King and Queen, the 2 most powerful officers in Kaido's entire crew at the current day. Then, about 28 years ago, Kurozumi Higurushi approached Kaido with an offer of territory to build weapons factories in Wano, which is known for its skilled craftsmen, which would allow him to increase his might even further. Orochi was also close to seizing control of the shogunate, and as soon as he did, Kaido began his occupation of Wano. His occupation of Wano is honestly strange to me because he's a massive figure in Wano while Oden is still there, and truly starts to take the country over while Oden is out on his adventure. This is because 25 years ago, Kaido confronted Oden at the Shogun's castle because he tried to kill Orochi. This is when Kaido and Oden made a deal. If Oden danced naked in the flower capital once a week, then the people of Wano would be spared, and Kaido's crew would leave Wano in 5 years. This is what led to the Dancing Oden legend, and once Oden fulfilled his end of the promise, he went on his seafaring adventure with Whitebeard and Roger. While he was doing that, Kaido continued his occupation of Wano, and about 23 years ago, he fought against Gekko Moria in Ringo, and left him in the state that we saw him in during the Thriller Bark arc. We actually recently learned that Moria is from Wano, so his fight against Kaido in Wano, and his possession of Ryuma's body and sword makes a lot more sense now. It was 3 years after this that Oden finally made his return to Wano, and since it's immediately apparent that Kaido and his men won't be leaving, Oden rounds up his retainers to fight Kaido and his crew on Onigashima. This is the battle where Kaido got his iconic scar, as Oden was the one that gave it to him, and was looking like he was gonna win the fight before Higurushi Higurashi impersonated a kidnapped Momonosuke and distracted him. His scar is easily one of the most iconic parts of his design, and seeing the story of how he got it was incredibly interesting, and Kaido ended up killing Higurashi because of her interference. From Oden's death all the way up to the events of the Wano arc, his occupation of Wano continued as he gained more power and more weapons factories were built in the country. The state of Wano when Luffy and his crew finally get there is one of fool's gold, as the flower capital looks as beautiful as it's always looked, but the outskirts of the country are only getting worse and worse. We all know how insane the battle between Kaido and Luffy was, and that actually makes a lot of sense because of Luffy's connections with Joy Boy. Now you might wonder why that would matter, but Kaido believed that Joy Boy would be the only person that had a chance to defeat him. While Luffy was hitting Kaido with his final attack, Kaido remembered a conversation that he had with King once, in which he literally stated that Joy Boy would be the one who would be able to defeat him. Now Joy Boy is known as the very first pirate, so it makes sense that Kaido knows all about him, but I think that it might be a little bit deeper than that. We've learned throughout the Egghead Island and Elbaf arcs that the Giants have connections with Joy Boy and Nika, and something tells me that the Onis may have some sort of connection to them as well. With that being said, we won't really know until we see another Oni, because I'm pretty sure that Kaido is the only one that we've seen so far, but please let me know down in the comment section below if I'm wrong. And with that, I only have one more thing left to talk about when it comes to Kaido, because even though he made his first appearance during chapter 795, that wasn't the first time that he was mentioned. This is because he was actually mentioned during the Impel Down arc, and that's because when Whitebeard was on his way to Marineford, Kaido actually tried to stop him, as he saw this as the perfect opportunity to have the death that he's always wanted. This, however, was stopped by Shanks when he intercepted him, and that's why Shanks was able to make it to Marineford and end the war. Kaido always lived up to his title as the world's strongest creature, and if he's actually dead after the events of Wano, then his impact on the story will never be forgotten. I mean, honestly, even though he's dead, we could still learn new stuff about him in the future, just like we are right now with the God Valley flashback. And with that, it's time for us to move on to the final Yonko that we're going to talk about in this video, as we're going to talk about Shanks a little bit differently from the way that we talked about the other three. This is because I plan on talking about him in the video about the current Yonko as well, since he's the only original member that's still a member to this day. This means that in this video, I'll only be talking about the stuff that he does in the pre-time skip material, and that includes only talking about the flashbacks that we get before the time skip as well. So, red-haired Shanks, commonly known as just Red Hair, is the chief of the Red Hair Pirates, and one of the 4 emperors of the sea. He's also one of the characters that we get to see the earliest in the story, as he appears in the very first chapter, and only Luffy and Roger appear before him. This man is the reason that Luffy wanted to be a pirate in the first place, and he's the reason why Luffy has the overpowered devil fruit that he currently has. Both of those things could be revealed to be parts in the grand plan that he has, but only time will tell, and no matter what other motives he had, he still sacrificed one of his arms to save a little boy that really looked up to him. Shanks truly is an extremely laid-back man, preferring to take his time by traveling around the world with his crew and enjoying himself, as opposed to rushing from one place to another. His normal attitude is completely different from how he acts when he's serious, as he seems like a really cool guy most of the time, but if he has a problem with you, he becomes scary rather quickly. Shanks has always been one of my favorite characters because he's just cool, and you know that you're gonna get to see some cool stuff whenever he appears. Like, this man used to just have duels with the strongest swordsman in the world, Mihawk, and he's still alive to tell the tale, so it's pretty clear that they were pretty competitive. Like, Shanks making an appearance towards the end of the East Blue Saga with Mihawk coming to visit him is some of the coolest stuff in the early story, and I've always loved how much he looks forward to Luffy's career as a pirate. Even though he had the perfect chance to see Luffy again at the end of the Marineford War, he knew that Luffy hadn't become a great pirate yet, and that Luffy wouldn't want to meet him yet, so he refrained. We've also already talked about his meeting with Whitebeard about Ace, so I think we should talk about the time that he met with Ace. This was basically Ace meeting with Shanks to thank him for saving his little brother, and you can probably tell that this interaction was immediately positive as soon as Ace brought up Luffy. It's also clear that Shanks saw potential in Ace just like everybody else, as not only did he assume that Ace wanted to become the next king of the pirates, he also knew that his haki was already notably strong. There was also a time shortly after he lost his arm to the sea monster that he went to Rayleigh to talk about Luffy, beaming about the potential that he had because of the way that he said the same words as their captain. He's just such a likable character, and the final thing that he does before the time skip is stop the Marineford War, as Whitebeard's death was enough violence for that day. As that arc is winding down, it really seems like they're just gonna keep fighting when they don't need to, but Shanks comes in and shuts that shit down, and even Sengoku agrees that it's time for the fighting to stop. Seeing as they're one of the three great powers, it only makes sense that the Yonko would be extremely influential on the One Piece story, but given the characters that these guys are, it only makes sense that there's a lot to say about them. I originally planned on talking about all of the characters that have been Yonko in this video, but the Whitebeard section alone was 6 pages, so I knew that I would have to split this topic up into 2 videos if I didn't want it to be extremely long. This happens a lot when it comes to the topics that I have, but I honestly don't mind it because it gives me the ability to give focus to certain characters and topics that really deserve it. With that being said, that's all I really have to say about the original Yonko for now. Be on the lookout for the second part of this series sometime in the future. Please join me next time for whatever I post next. Please leave a like and maybe subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.